Hey, well, welcome back to the channel. I've been meaning to do this now for, I don't know who that is. Hello? Wait a minute, is that a taser?
We're gonna need you to give us an honest review of the RMAX now that it's been 6
All right,
months.
I'll do it.
Tell us exactly what you think of this machine.
Okay. Oh my goodness. That was a crazy dream. Jeez. Oh. Let's have a little talk, shall we? 6 months I've owned this beautiful piece, and I want to give everyone out there that is thinking about buying one of these, or that is still on the fence, because I know with the state of the world today, there's going to be problems finding all sorts of stuff. Don't get me started on plywood and 2x4s. Anyways, 6 months into this machine, well, a little bit more than that, honestly. I bought it in the end of October. So, right away, because you're going to want to know, am I happy with the machine? Yes, I'm ecstatic with the machine. So much so that I was able to be on a Zoom conference call with Yamaha, their power sports division. It was myself and a couple other guys. I think we were 20 people total picked to discuss the 4-seater and the 2-seater. And we had some really good feedback that we all shared to Yamaha, and I was very privileged that Yamaha chose me. So Yamaha, if you're listening to this, thank you very much. That was amazing that you invited me on that conference call. I appreciate that, and I think it's outstanding that you are taking into consideration and wanting to be involved with your customer basis. It's fantastic. The people that buy these machines have feedback on them, and Yamaha is listening. So, excellent stuff. Okay, let's get down to business. 6 months into it, I haven't had any issues with the machine. Only, silly stuff, which we'll get into in a little bit. I don't want this video to be super lengthy, but I do think that it needs to be detailed enough where you'll get my opinion and there's transparency, because these are very expensive machines and people out there are going to have a certain expectation when they spend this kind of money. So the second week of April, I believe, I took this machine to Hatfield McCoy, and we rode 3 trail systems, I think. Bear Wallow, Ivy Branch, Rock House. I think that was it. I'll throw some pictures up of the trip during my little talk on things. And that was my first real sort of kick-ass experience with this machine. And, buying it in October, I didn't really have a lot of time to experience what this machine was capable of, just because of the fact that, the weather started to get gnarly. I went to Michigan a few times, but ultimately I couldn't really do anything super serious just with the time of the year and all that. So, but this thing performed amazing at Hatfield. I mean, I can't even describe to you how much fun I had there. Unbelievable. It went through anything I needed it to go through comfortably. Power was always available and on tap. There were no hills that made me concerned that I needed more power. And I was with the group of guys that I rode with. One guy had a Turbo Polaris, and there was no issues following him or anything like that. A lot of times I was doing the leading because I was just having so much fun blasting this thing. I mean, it felt like a damn trophy truck almost, you know, into straightaways where you could see down the road safely. It was just nice to blast. But man, what an experience. Hatfield is a wonderful place to take these things because it's really just point and shoot. And you could really enjoy yourself, even on the steep, gnarly hill climbs, you know, four-wheel low and just have fun. Matter of fact, this thing would, I could scream this thing up some of the hills. And I noticed after that trip, the abundance of power is so great on this machine that it was really wearing the rear tires on some of the rocky surfaces, because I know I'm just putting this thing to the mat and it's, you know, just ripping up these rocks. So you got to be careful, I guess, with tire wear on this thing if you're in rocky conditions. These stock carnivores, they wear pretty quick, especially if you're a lead foot or just trying to have a blast like I was at Hatfield. So having said that, I can give you a better review on things going to Hatfield. We went through just about all the conditions you could go through in West Virginia. We had, you know, nice warm temperatures, cool temperatures, dampness and rain. Our Saturday at Rock House, probably a couple hours into the ride, it started to drizzle, and then towards the end of the day it was pouring. So the one thing that I noticed, and I probably touched on this before, but the rain protection with the windshield, very good when you're moving. When you stop, the gutter on the front of the windshield is good, but the rain will follow down and it will drip right into the, you know, right onto your legs. So not a huge deal. If you had full doors or something, you would have been fine. Again, these are very little gripes, but some of them are kind of a ball buster in a way. This thing got, and I'm going to throw some pictures up, within like the first 10 minutes. And I was not purposely seeking out mud holes, but you know, when you're riding, sometimes you can't help but hit muddy spots. And this thing, the mud protection stock is borderline horrendous. I mean, by the end of the day at Rock House, you couldn't even tell this thing was green. And I'll throw a picture up so you can see it. I know aftermarket, there are a few things available for it, but I don't want to just stick on like rubber over fenders or whatever you'd want to call them, like extensions. It just, I get it, like it does work, but this thing looks too nice. I feel like it breaks up the lines of it just to toss chunks of rubber on here. I'm really waiting for some factory, like Yamaha bolt-on, you know, some kind of protection for that. And during our Zoom call, we talked about that. Everybody pretty much agreed that, yo, Yamaha engineers, get moving on some badass looking fender extensions, because this thing looks too cool in my opinion. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I bought it. I love the way it looked, which obviously don't just buy something for its looks, but I think it would do the product a disservice, in my opinion, again, just to shove chunks of rubber on here. It'd be nice to have some kind of cool looking fender that was designed and made to match the style of the bodywork. It could be black. I mean, I think that would look good. Or color match stuff would be sweet too. You know, they could offer them in the colors that the body comes in, you know, the blue and the white, and or black would look good with the white, or, you know, whatever. I mean, they'll figure that out. But so mud protection, horrendous. In-cab comfort was really good. We put on like 125 or 135 miles over 2 days. And they weren't really full days because you know how it is. You get a late start in the morning, or apologize about that. The old GoPro wanted to turn off for some crazy reason. I gotta check the settings on the thing. Anyways, suspension, perfect. I had it set on number 2, and this is all stock, no tender springs or anything, and felt good to me, man. Like, I was hitting stuff hard. This thing has a tendency to kind of nosedive, if you're hitting whoops and stuff with it, which you know, is kind of a tendency for a lot of these things. But I felt the suspension was great. It soaked up all the bumps. Again, I feel like my trail riding comfort is kind of fast. I'm not just, you know, booze cruise style where I'm going 5 miles an hour or whatever. Like, I'm running this thing. It's doing, you know, in straightaways, I was getting this thing up to probably 20 or 30, maybe even 40 in some spots at Hatfield, as long as I could see good and straight. Obviously, I don't condone driving like an idiot, especially, you know, if you're going around the blind corners there, it can be really dangerous. You gotta really be careful at a place like that. But when I could see straight, I was ripping this thing, and it was, I mean, my buddy was with me we grew up together, you know, back in middle school and high school, my buddy Nick, and, you know, it's kind of hard to talk. I guess maybe that's a negative. It's still kind of noisy in the cabin, but we were like laughing like little schoolgirls, hitting these, you know, whoops and stuff and kicking the ass end in the air, and man, it was just one hell of an experience. I can't wait to go back. This machine is a blast on the trails. And if you've ever been to Hatfield, you know that there can be some kind of technical spots and some, you know, like if you're doing hills, there can be some spots where you have to really turn sharply to kind of zigzag your way up the mountains. And this thing is very predictable, and you can kind of steer with the throttle too, which is really nice. Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about how comfortable it was on the trail. It exceeded my expectations, for sure. There's really not too many negative things about this machine, I'm going to be honest with you. You know, changing the oil and stuff, a little tricky. You got to be careful under the bed that you don't, you know, cut your head off. You kind of have to reach in there to get to the oil filter, but it's doable. If you've watched my oil change video, then you know that it can be done. So maintenance isn't that bad. This thing's definitely a head turner for sure. You know, there's still not a lot of them out there, and whenever I would run into spots where we would stop, where there'd be other people, they were looking at it. The place that we stayed at this hotel in, is it Logan, technically? We were a little bit, I think, north of Logan, but like a Holiday Inn Express or something. There were a couple other trucks there that had side-by-sides, and most of them were older Yamahas. There was I think they were like R specs. There might have been an X2 there, and all these guys were like salivating over this thing. The one guy was like, man, he's like, I just need my dealer to get one so that I can put a, you know, deposit down or trade mine in. So I think the people out there that are Yamaha fans, excuse me, they realize that this is really one of the next steps to take if you're going to be more aggressive on the trails. My other buddy Jeff, he brought his R spec, and that thing had big horns, and I think it was lifted by an inch or two, and he might have had wheel spacers on it. I forget, but you know, he went everywhere we went. So it's not, you don't need to have like the biggest thing in the group to have fun, you know. But we swapped, and he drove this thing, and he was like instantly sold on it. I mean, really the feel, and I jumped on his R spec, and I mean, I hate to say it, it kind of feels like a glorified golf cart to me. And it just, the power doesn't compare. This thing, when you need it, the power is available. You definitely can feel the 108 horse. I mean, I know with the CVT and the driveline, you're not getting 108 to the wheels, but it's got more than enough power to get you where you need to be quickly, and that in its sense kind of like builds a little bit of confidence, because you know you have some reserve power with this thing, and you're able to tackle stuff that maybe you would think twice about on a machine that has a little bit lesser of power. So I guess that could be a pro and a con. I know my limits with stuff, and there's no way I would do any insane hill climbs or anything really narrow. I just don't feel comfortable with that, and I don't like mud bogs or anything like that. So I didn't have to use diff lock once. Four wheel high I used a couple times for like the long hills that weren't really steep, and then obviously four wheel low with the real steep, long, nasty stuff. There was a pretty long, nasty hill at Ivy Branch that was a blast. I mean, literally, this thing gets so much traction. It puts the power down to the ground so well. I mean, you just sit back and have fun. Like, you just concentrate on picking a line and go. So, yeah, exceeded my expectations, really. I mean, I knew that this thing was going to be a blast, but man, I mean, words can't describe how much fun I had in Hatfield with this thing. So, other cons or things that I'm concerned about. I mentioned this to Yamaha. I feel like a 6-month warranty, depending on when you purchase this thing, isn't enough. I really think that this machine is built robust enough where they should just offer a 1-year warranty on it. I didn't go with the Yamaha extended service just because I guess I'm kind of a gambler, but ultimately I don't foresee this thing having any major problems. I know there's been some issues with some transmissions, but Yamaha's fully aware of it, and they are taking care of everybody that has issues. I've heard, from a few people online that they felt like Yamaha still dropped the ball, and I mean, obviously I can't speak for Yamaha, but I don't see why, after having the Zoom call I had with them last week, why they would ever just push people to the side like, another power sports company might. They seem like, especially with a machine as new as this, that they want to make sure you're satisfied and happy with your purchase. So obviously, if you're, a gorilla stuck in a mud hole, buried up to the doors or something, and you throw the thing in low and lock your diffs and break shit, they're probably not going to warranty your stupidity. So I think that needs to be in the back of everyone's mind. This machine will do everything you want it to do within reason. If you're going to be an idiot, you're going to break stuff. There's no machine out there that's idiot-proof. So I anticipate that this machine will last me a very long time with how I drive. And that's spirited, fun, flat out a lot of times. I like going fast and everything else, but I try to stay away from the stupid, the things that could go poorly, let's say that. I made a list that I discussed some things on the Zoom call, and let me get you over to, we'll move over here, and we can talk a little bit about these are some of the things I talked to on the Zoom call with Yamaha, and obviously they wanted to know all the pros, and there's lots of them, and they wanted to know cons, and I wasn't going to tell them any feedback that I didn't experience. So I know some people, a typical complaint that we hear on the forums and stuff, or Facebook groups, are like weird clunking noises and stuff. There's going to be driveline vibration. I don't know how well they balanced stuff with this thing. We did talk about it in the Zoom call. If you're braking hard in a corner or something, you might hear like things lock up and clunk and stuff. I've driven so much stuff that seems normal to me. There's going to be some vibration. You're going to get, chatter and stuff like that. So I did mention it just because there are some times where I hear it, but I don't think it's a huge deal. The mud protection, I mentioned that. I didn't go into detail what I wanted to see other than some nice fender options. I did mention about the oil filter location not being the easiest and most accessible. It's not terrible, but it's not, it's not easy. I think that um, the easier you make maintenance on something, the more people are going to do it. The Adventure Pro. So I, as much as I think the Adventure Pro isn't the best value, and I definitely stand behind that, for $1,000 or whatever it is to upgrade to it, that's insane. Like, that's way too expensive in my opinion for what it is currently. But having said that, it was pretty cool to track where we were riding. And if you've ever been to Hatfield, it's very easy to get lost there, especially if you lose your map. And I was riding with 5 other guys, and a couple of us lost maps. And matter of fact, like one I found underneath the seat. It must have got jammed under there. But it was pretty cool to record your steps on the Adventure Pro and then look at it when you got turned around or wanted to find your way back to the parking lot or a trailhead or something like that. So that was pretty cool. I did in the Zoom call, I did emphasize that they need to have more development done to the Adventure Pro. We need to see some more stuff to it. Like, it's a computer in the dash and it's running Android, so it's relatively easy to program for if you're a developer. There's no reason why we shouldn't see other types of interfaces, cameras. I mean, it wouldn't be hard to have some kind of wireless streaming camera to the thing, but again, either they have to open up the API of the Adventure Pro and let nerds like me look at it, or Yamaha needs to hire some more developers, because I feel like you could do a lot more with it, a lot more. And it's integrated so well in the dash. Like, it looks sweet, but they need to do more to it. The one other thing I mentioned, and I don't know, you guys can comment below if you've had this issue with it, but it is a pain in the arse to get that thing out of the dock. You got like that button on the back of it, and then you're supposed to like kind of rock it forward and pull it out. I don't even mess with it anymore because I'm afraid I'm going to break one of the tabs or something in it. So I just leave it in the cradle, but it's really hard to get out. So I mentioned that to him. Since you probably saw the video where I got the A-arm guards on there, I told them that every single threaded hole, either there's paint or something in it. So again, these are super nitpicky type things. They're not gonna stop, at least they shouldn't stop you from buying one of these things. This is a fantastic machine. The tailgate rattles, I said it would take you guys a little bit, like $1 worth of rubber plugs or something to put on the back of the tailgate, so when you slam it, it compresses against that rubber and it doesn't vibrate. You're spending $20,000 plus, and I don't want to hear any squeaks or rattles or anything like that. It's bad enough the brake squeak, which is kind of a typical thing. Which reminds me, later on I'm going to have a video where I'm going to do a tire rotation, since the rears are a little bit worn more than the fronts. So I'm going to do the old switcheroo there, and I'm going to go over all the brakes. So that's going to come up here. Maybe we'll get to that. So next weekend or something. Let's see here. I mentioned about the little plugs on the back of the exhaust pipe. Those vanity covers that hide the bolt holes, how those things fall off, and I had to use silicone. Again, these are like real nitpicky stuff. I think that was, let's see. Oh, this was kind of a big one. I know people don't like this, but I feel like the ROPS, the rollover protection, is a little high. And not that it was a huge deal at all during the ride at Hatfield, but in Michigan, I've been into some tighter trails, and you're smacking the roof on branches sometimes. And I know that if you don't have a big toy hauler or, a tall garage door or something, this thing is kind of tall. I feel like they could have chopped 2 inches out of the cage, and still, like, I think on the Zoom call, one of the guys was over 6 foot tall, and he said that you could take 2 inches out of the cage and it would still be fine for him. So maybe that's something that they could think about for, 2022 or 23 model year, lowering that cage a little bit. They probably are not, because then they'd have to retool the windshield and stuff like that. Oh, speaking of the windshield, again, you know that I have the Yamaha poly windshield. Lifesaver, honestly, when you're trail riding, you need to have one. But it scratches fairly easily, and I was being very careful with I would spray it down really good, and then I'd be careful with like I had a couple microfiber towels like this with me that I'd try to lift the dust and stuff off. And really what I found that would work best, and we stopped at one of the waterfalls there, and I would fill up Gatorade bottles and take water with me, and I would just splash it all over the windshield, and then that would get most of the dust off. But if you buy any poly windshield, honestly, assume that it's going to get some scratches if you try to clean it. If I had to do things over, I probably would just wait for a glass windshield with an integrated wiper system with spray. They're expensive, but man, I think as long as the visibility is good out of it, that would be so nice, you know, because you're riding, and in certain conditions it can go from like dusty to dry, or dry and dusty to damp, and then you get mud and stuff on it, or you go through a puddle. And again, because the front of this thing is lacking in mud and splash protection, boom, right on your windshield. Now you can't see that great, and you either got to stop or you got to deal with it. So, you know, talking about mud protection again, the back end of this thing, it's not such a big deal, but the front end definitely, it needs some help for sure. I think that's the thing I hate the most about this thing, is the mud protection. If I had to think of one thing, it would definitely be that. Yeah, and right now, obviously, with probably most other machines, it's hard to get stuff right now. And we all expressed that when we were in our Zoom call with Yamaha, and they're doing everything they can. They're dealing with supply chain issues just like everybody else. I mean, there's a semiconductor shortage now. You see, I remember Ford being in the news about having all these pickup trucks just sitting in Michigan or wherever waiting to go, but they're waiting for computer chips. So it's everybody. Everybody's having a problem, and I do feel bad for the people that have thrown down money. They have deposits. They're waiting for this thing. That is tough, because yeah, you want to just go to your dealer and buy the damn thing and start ripping. So I get that, and it's tough. So yeah, and I think I mentioned this, the stock carnivores. If you're going to be, Bobby Hammer time on the road, these tires are going to wear pretty fast. If you're going to be like me at the trails and putting the thing to the wood, going up rocky hill climbs and stuff, they're going to wear pretty fast. But I don't think I would get a different tire right now. I know there's other really good choices out there. There's tons of tires. For right now, for me, as a stock tire, really good. Really good. And with it being a square setup, I did, bring my spare and stuff with me. That's nice to know too, that I don't have to worry about carrying, a different tire or whatever. Like the Honda Talon, for instance, the front tires are more narrow. Now, you still could carry one spare theoretically. Let's say the front tire blew and you had the regular width rear tire. You could throw that up front. It would screw up the handling and stuff, but at least you could get back to, McDonald's or, wherever you parked your truck and trailer at or something. So, honestly, not much else. I don't have a lot of bad things to say about this thing at all. It's performed very well for me. I haven't had anything weird happen. No issues with the trans. Stumbling during real cold starts. I mentioned that to Yamaha when it was like 35 degrees or something like that in my shop. It would fire up and then stop. So maybe it needs to be richened up a little bit. During the end of the call, I mentioned to Yamaha, I know you guys build one hell of a good engine. I had an FZ09, and I know that had forged bottom end, And I'm like, I bet you this thing does too. You know, Yamaha guys can't disclose too much, but I told them, like, yo, if you guys are going to build a turbo kit for this and you need me to be a test mule, I'd be happy to oblige and test it out for you. This machine is going to sell very well for Yamaha. I know it will. It's a great machine. I mean, I can't, and I'll answer anybody's questions below. And I know that this is an insanely long video, so if you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. But I'm probably going to wrap it up here just because it's getting too long. Very happy with the machine. I think Yamaha has a winner on their hands. It's evident that they're listening to their customers, because if they weren't listening to their customers, this thing never would have been built. They never would have made this thing. It's evident, and especially with that Zoom call, that Yamaha is listening to their customers, because I know that during that call, during that Zoom call, they said that the development team and the engineers and everybody over there, you know, down to the assembly workers, they worked their tails off to build this thing and to come out swinging for the fences, and it's evident. It's a great product. And I encourage you to comment below if you have any questions or want to give your feedback. As far as I know, and from what I heard, Yamaha is looking at these videos, and I know that they've looked at mine before, and I appreciate that. And I know that they are the kind of company that wants to hear this feedback, because they want to know if they're on the right path, and they are definitely on the right path. So, yeah. So that's all I have to say about that. Maybe my mind will change in another 6 months, but so far, so good with the RMAX. Thank you for hanging in there. If you skipped around, that's fine too. I appreciate everybody that has subbed recently and has been commenting and providing feedback. That's the best part about the internet. So have a good rest of your Sunday. Talk to you guys later.